Welcome back to Pixel Project Radio, the video game discussions podcast where we do deep dives and analyze all of our favorite games, and some of yours too. My name is Rick, I am your host, and today, in honor of March 10th, Mario Day, we're talking all about Super Mario Wonder. Very excited to dive into this one. As always at the top, I must thank the patrons, for it is them that keeps this engine turning. Thank you to the patrons. If you would like to be like these fine folks, go into the episode description and check out the link that goes to www.patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. As always, I'm joined by a wonderful guest, and today we've got a first-timer on the show. He is the host of the Nostalgium Arcanum podcast. We've got Doug here. Doug, thanks for joining me, man.
It's a me. I'm ready to go. I'm very excited to talk about Super Mario Wonder. This is we'll get into it, but this game is a treat on just about every level.
On just about every level, yeah. I really do agree. I'm going to just get that thought out there at the very beginning. I completely agree, which is strange. I saw a lot of criticism for this game online, and I've said this before, I don't really have a lot of Mario experience. This is kind of getting into the next topic here, so I'll just segue us over onto our Mario histories. It's not that I don't have a lot, but it's very spotty. I've played the NES Marios, all three of them. Well, all four of them, if we're including the real Super Mario Bros. 2 Lost Levels. A little tiny bit of Super Mario World, and then the Super Mario Land series on Game Boy, that trilogy. I've never touched a single new Super Mario Brothers game. None of them for DS, 3DS, Wii U, none of them. And a lot of the criticism that I've seen kind of hinges on that knowledge. So in that way, I'm approaching this fresh, completely separated from any biases from that general area, which in some ways I think can be good, and in some ways maybe a little disadvantageous. We'll see. But what about you? I know we'll talk about Nostalgium Arcanum towards the very end, but part of your show is looking back into the past at the things that we've all enjoyed from our childhoods. And for you, that's a lot of the older Mario games. But I'm curious, do you have a lot of experience with the other 2D Marios? Any of the 3D Marios? Anything of that sort?
I was born in 1980, so my Mario experience goes all the way back to Donkey Kong. His first appearance. I think that was his first. So I have very strong memories of when the original Super Mario Brothers came out, playing that a bunch, and then the hype and for American Super Mario Brothers 2 and the mega hype that surrounded Super Mario 3, and I still think Super Mario World, the first one for the SNES, is probably edges 3 out as the best 2D Mario for me. I do have some experience with modern 2D Mario, but not nearly that much. I didn't play the Game Boy ones. I didn't play a lot of those 3DS ones. There was one that I think they ported over to the Wii that I did play, if it's the one I'm thinking of. And then there's that new one, the one with the cat Mario, that's like mostly 2D, sort of. Like you kind of move around in 3D space a little, but it's not the same way you do in, say, 64. And I did play the major 3D releases. So I played 64, played Sunshine, forced myself to collect all of the collectibles in that. I did Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 and completed those, as well as Odyssey. So I've kind of hit most of the mainline Mario stuff. To give you a sense of like where my Mario history lies.
Just out of curiosity, what is your favorite? Is it World?
World would be my favorite 2D Mario game, I think. I feel pretty confident in saying that. As far as favorite 3D one goes, probably one of the Galaxy games. I have a clearer memory of Galaxy 1. I remember loving Galaxy 2, but I've not played it recently, so I don't remember how much better it is. But those, I think, are the best 3D Marios for me. The joy of warping 3D space into these little asteroids, completely changing the perspective on what a 3D Mario can do. So I have a lot of fondness for those. But all of it goes into what what I think makes Mario a special franchise and why it is kind of the ambassador for video games, despite having no real meaningful story in 4 decades of Mario, is the ingenuity that you associate with Mario, where it's like, yeah, he has a fairly like set of verbs that he does in a game, right? We're going to find ways to keep reinterpolating that over and over, giving him inventive things to do, different gimmicks per level, ways to implement those gimmicks and power-ups that like no other franchise I think can touch, and which is why Super Mario Wonder works as well as it does. It's because it taps right into that core philosophy that really starts with Super Mario Brothers 3.
That's well said. I agree with a lot of that. This game to me felt a lot like a celebration of the ideal of Mario and the philosophy behind these games. Less so, it felt less like a platforming challenge. And I've seen that criticism thrown at it, that it's easy, that it doesn't feel as what's the word? That it doesn't feel as challenging compared to like Super Mario Brothers 3 or Super Mario World. And I totally see that. I do agree. A lot of this wasn't mechanically difficult, but that never seemed like the point to me as I was going through top to bottom. It seemed like a way of showcasing all of the creativity that goes into designing the Mario experience. And the mechanical challenge is only a small part of that. Truly, for better or for worse, in some ways that has become less of an important, less front seat sort of identity piece for it. Again, for better or for worse, we'll kind of parse that out, because I think up front, this is going to be a shorter episode because it's Mario, but also I think it would be interesting to compare this to some of the games in the past because of how the design philosophy has changed, and because so many of the Mario old heads, as they're known, everybody knows them that way, worked on this and contributed to this. That was a core philosophy of designing this game, was returning to that sense of exploration that was present in the older ones, finding secrets, exploring the levels to find that warp whistle or to find that secret warp pipe that'll let you skip over a couple worlds. That was at the core of this. And did they achieve it that specifically? Maybe. I mean, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's not perfect. It's not my favorite 2D Mario game. I think, though, if you gave me one of these every couple of years, I'd be very happy. You talked about difficulty, and I think the question is difficult to whom? Because, I've been doing this, playing these games for 40 years, right? Yes, to me, most of Super Mario Wonder was not a mechanical challenge. I had no difficulty completing this game. There are a handful of levels that have some tricky stuff in it, but it's less than 5% of the game. Most of it is not about, how many times it's going to take you to get past the challenge. It's, there's some, but like you said, this isn't Celeste, right? It's not, this is not Mesa Core platforming, but, I try to put myself in the headspace of like, well, what was it? I can beat Super Mario Brothers 3 now without too much trouble. It was more of a challenge when I was, I think, 9 or 10 when that came out. And so it's a little hard to look at this Mario game and go like, it's too easy. Like, well, for you, full grown adult, yes. If I handed this off to my kids who would be the prime age for this, they would find it fairly challenging. So I don't think that's exactly a fair criticism to level against it, that like, I'm sorry, it's not hard enough for you, guy who can beat Elden Ring with a guitar, but that's just not how it's meant to be. I think the pleasure in Mario, it doesn't come from the challenge. The pleasure in Mario comes from the sense of wonder, right? The sense of like, oh man, you just surprised me with something fun and cool. This is much towards the candy side of gaming than it is towards the eat your vegetables side.
I think that's an interesting way of putting it. It's an analogy that I've used before myself. I think it comes down to, and by the way, too, I'm not particularly good at 2D platformers. Like I had played Super Mario 3 the final NES installment, for this episode, specifically before playing Super Mario Wonder, just to see that lineage. I wanted to play World as well, but I just, time. One, I loved Super Mario Brothers 3. It is really terrific. It's hard. Talking to folks like you and some of the other folks around in our shared spaces that have lived with it for a long time, they're like, it's not so bad. I struggled a fair amount. I mean, never to the point of a game over, because you get one-ups like crazy in those games. So you're expected to die to learn the roadmap. That's just part of it. It's basically Dark Souls is what I'm getting at here. But yeah, it was...
in a way. Yeah, I was going to say what Super Mario Brothers 3 does is that, like you said, it's constantly throwing free lives at you and power-ups all the time. So what it's telling you is like, yeah, whatever, die. Don't worry about it, dude. You're going to try again and again. Mm-hmm. And we're going to give you all of these different tools you can try to make it easy for yourself. Here's a power-up that lets you basically fly over an entire level if you're having trouble with it. So it's very friendly in that way.
You know what's funny is for some reason, I didn't know that you could use those like before the levels start until World 6. Before that, I was just raw dogging it the whole time. But anyway, we're not talking about Super Mario Brothers 3. Before we dive in any further, let's read some community forum responses. This one comes from Matt Storm. Matt Storm again. Here's what Matt says. And I pared some of these down lightly, just for length. I'm a longtime Mario fan. I was really excited for Wonder since I had felt that the new Super Mario games, while fun, had gotten kind of stale. I'm sad to report, though, that I was pretty disappointed by this game. It's not a bad game, I just didn't feel the wonder. It felt pretty average to me. It's undeniably gorgeous to look at, especially on the Switch OLED, and the music is great, but I only got about 3 worlds in before dropping off. I'll probably go back and finish it at some point, but I'm bummed that I didn't seem to see in it what everyone else has. Now, just to read one that goes right off of the back of that, let's read Nomad. Nomad says, as someone who missed out on a lot of the Mario games growing up, I was quickly taken with wonder when I saw the announcement for it. The fun visuals and the unique level design really spoke to me, and I found myself craving a whimsical adventure. I found myself quite relaxed anytime I played. The carefree nature of it all was soothing, and I really enjoyed the Wonder Flower mechanics that turned each level into something different. That's what drove me, the desire to see what crazy new twist was going to be thrown at the player next. At the end of the day, I felt like Mario Wonder wasn't the best platforming experience I've ever had, but it's a journey I was glad to go on. So we've got 2 responses back-to-back that sort of saw the game very differently. And this is what I've been seeing online, too, as I've been looking up just different Reddit threads. This game has been out for about a year now, a year and change, and we've seen a lot of positive and negatives about it. I tend to side a little more with Nomad. It's a shame that Matt jumped off 3 worlds in. For my money, 2 of my favorite worlds in this were World 2 and World 6, which we'll get to when we actually talk about it. But World 6 in particular, and 5 too. 5 and 6 were, I thought, very, very strong.
I think 4, 5, and 6 are the strongest levels. Yeah, so Matt jumped off just before it got real good. But I understand the point he's making, and for me, what it is I see where this game misses the mark on something that World does very, very well. So I'm glad you got a chance to play 3 before we did this. I kind of wish you got a chance to see a little more Super Mario World before, because when you go through Super Mario World and you find like secret exits to levels, that unlocks pathways to more levels. Like, all sorts of secret, cool ways to go to basically your reward is more game. And here, when you do that, your reward is 1 more seed. But you're never really going to be like short wonder seeds. So it does unlock things sometimes, but not nearly to the degree it does in Super Mario World. And I think that is a missed opportunity. That like you could have. The template's right there. You already did it. They could have just done it again instead of just sort of like, okay, well, here you found that there was a secret wonder seed in this level. So good for you. I hope you enjoyed that. And it's still fun. It's still fun to do that. But also you might have to go back and play the level again to get one of the ones you didn't get. And then there's not much to do with that seed once you have it. So I do see that feeling of like Oh, so close, but not quite on that. However, the individual levels, like when you're in the moment of like experiencing basically a trippy hallucination of whatever's happening, they're so whimsical and delightful that you just can't help but be kind of like tickled by the weird shit that's happening. It's a little like a famous level from Super Mario Brothers 3 where like this angry sun comes and attacks you, right? Super Mario Wonder basically is like, what if every level had something like that in it? Every level had a creative, weird gimmick. And I don't think any of the weird gimmicks in this game, I could be wrong, but I don't think any of them are reused more than once. So if you see a cool gimmick, you might see it one more time and then never again. For an entire game, that's a lot of weird creative gimmicks they have to come up with.
Do you, Doug, do you by chance know the YouTuber Video Game Donkey?
I've heard the name, but only in connection with Animal Well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been around since the 2010s, like the early 2010s. A lot of people see him, like, don't take him seriously as a critic, partly because, that's not his persona. He's like a funny guy, right? But also, I mean, there was some drama around him with critics. Anyway, I think he really knows what he's talking about when it comes to a lot of his criticism, especially with Mario. And something that he had said when he was talking about Super Mario Wonder is he made the distinction between the plot and the story of a Mario game. And when he said that, I was like, I'm very intrigued. Please tell me more. Because the plot of this game is very simple. Bowser comes in, as he is wont to do, to shit up the place. He turns into a floating, flying castle sort of thing with the power of a Wonder Seed, which becomes our MacGuffins throughout the whole game. And just to kind of be evil. And that's pretty much it. Like he doesn't kidnap Peach or anything, but it's sort of, there's nothing really else to say about the plot. But that's just the plot. And Donkey goes on to say the story is the trajectory from level to level. The start of the level to the end of the level, the first level to the final level, world to world. That's the story. And what makes Mario Wonder so, I think, effective is that story, like you were alluding to, Doug, it never gets stale. There is just, it's an endless fount of creativity. There's always something that they're trying. Even if they only try it for a level, they're just saying, let me just give this a try. And that's, we'll get into the development stuff here in a second, but that was one of their development philosophies. They didn't have a deadline. They just straight up said no deadline, which in any other team would cause a lot of problems. And it was because they wanted to try so much stuff. I think the number that I saw thrown around was over 2,000 ideas were floated, which, what does that actually mean? Who knows? But that's a lot of potential ideas. A lot of it was scrapped too, obviously. But Tezuka stated that he wanted to prevent people from saying, we won't make that deadline. So we just didn't have one. And it shows. I mean, the story, if we're talking level to level, world to world, is so exciting and fresh. Yes, the mechanical challenge isn't anywhere really near something like Mario Brothers 3 or World. Goodness knows it's nothing like Lost Levels because this game is actually good. But it's very exciting, and I could see maybe somebody that's really cynical saying something to the effect of, it's to keep the children's attention, but I don't buy that because I never felt pandered to. I felt pandered to because of the flowers. I think that's like the biggest misstep of this game are the talking flowers. We'll talk more about them later. But in terms of like the actual level and the story they're presenting to me from start to finish, I thought it was really delightful. This to me is what Nintendo does best. I thought it was really terrific.
Yeah, there was a design philosophy on Super Mario Brothers 3 that was basically like, as they were designing these levels, someone would go, well, is it fun? Wouldn't it be more fun if we did something like this? And it was kind of, as you said, it's the same team, basically, right? All the old heads, they're bringing back that philosophy. And it's like, it's that on steroids. Again, like I said, it's every time they're like, I don't know, what if there was some sort of like a Triceratops stampede and you have to ride it? Okay, why not? Wouldn't that be more fun than just running over a bunch of pits and spikes and enemies? Hell yeah, it is, right? They do that over and over and over again throughout this entire game. And I think that's what I'm sort of, when you say like, oh, well, it's going to hold a kid's attention because it's what, candy colored and cartoonish. Like, that's nothing to do with it. Like, I'm just so like delighted by the inventiveness that it's like, oh, you know, every time you're going to find one of those flowers, it's like, what's it going to be this time? What weird thing came out of your imagination and nobody said no to it, right? That, I think, is, as you said, that's the moment to moment story of Mario. I can think of like, I mean, Alice in Wonderland is a classic. It has no story. Alice wanders from interesting weird thing to interesting weird thing. And that's the story of Alice in Wonderland. Like, it's just a series of encounters with the Mad Hatter and Tweedledum and Tweedledee. And that's basically what this is. It's just, you know, just replace all of these, you know, Lewis Carroll characters with like, I don't know, the lights go out and Mario is 3 times his natural height, squishing himself in the shadows. Because why not? It's weird. Fun, right?
It's a very Japanese approach to storytelling. And, you know, disclaimer, obviously I'm not Japanese and I don't claim to know the culture. I could speak the language well enough to get myself into trouble. But, you know, whenever I watched The Ring, the original Japanese version a while ago, terrific horror movie. And when I was reading just some stuff online about it, because it was so different from what we got here, I was reading some folks that were saying, like, you know, with Japanese horror, it's not really about the story, you know, the story of Ghostface or the story of Michael Myers. It's not really about that. It's about the individual scenes and what kind of impact those scenes can have on you. And the moments between them, linking them together, it's I don't want to say it's secondary, but it's not the focus. And we can see that design philosophy, yes, here, but also it's been coming up within the Mario games, I think, on and off throughout the history. Speaking of creativity, we've got 2 more responses to read, and they're both really short. This first one's from Ryan from the List Off podcast. Here's what he has to say. It's no wonder that a 2D Mario title just sings. The unique ways Wonder Flowers transform Mario's surroundings make this game a joy to play by creating a constant stream of delightful, smile-worthy moments. Super Mario Wonder is truly wonderful, and it is well worth your time. Yeah, I can promise that we're not going to make as many of those puns as Ryan is. Keaton shares...
I promise nothing.
Yeah, that's true. You get a pass. Keaton says much of the same. Keaton says, the creativity it must have taken to come up with all of those Wonder Flower transformations must have been wild. I was blessed to play this both with the 9-year-old nephew and some 40-year-old friends. The only difference is the 9-year-old kept killing me on accident while my friends did it on purpose. I totally agree. This is, it is not so overly saccharine that it's just for kids. Like, this is for anybody. But I want to go back to the creativity thing. I think it was, for lack of a better term, sure there are better terms, but I just want to use this one. It was really ballsy of them to use one of their best moments of creativity right at the front, because I think it's not even in a world, it's like in the introductory levels. The second level is where you get the now very famous piranha plants on parade. You touch the Wonder Seed, and the piranha plants come out and start singing along to the soundtrack. And there's more that goes on too. The level turns into a sort of auto side scroll. The environment interacts with the music. This game has a lot of rhythm game DNA in it, which is very cool to me. But the environment interacts. There are multiple. It's a whole musical theater production, basically, in a Mario level. And that was level 2. They were so confident in what they had coming up that they put their best foot. Well, maybe not their best foot, but they put a very, very competent foot forward. That astounded me. I was smiling ear to ear throughout the whole first hour of this game. I couldn't believe that they were leading off with this. And sure, there are some levels and worlds that I wasn't as big on, but as a whole, I mean, this was really something special. I agree with Keaton in particular. The Wonder Flower transformations, which we'll get into here in a little bit, they are really stupendous. Some of them were I was just laughing like I was 12 on a Saturday morning again. That's not a feeling that you can often replicate, but it happened here.
I agree with that 1,000%. And there's the confidence in putting that Piranha Plant musical in the second level, which, as you said, it sets a tone, but also it sets an expectation where you're like, man, what else have they got up their sleeve if this is only the second level? And they don't disappoint for the most part for the rest of the game. They continue to surprise you with stuff. And then there's another bit of restraint, which is we're not getting a Piranha Plant musical in every world. There's only one other time they do it, and I think it's in one of those secret, hard to reach levels up in the sky. If I could be wrong about that, but I think that's where they put it. So the confidence to do it and then the restraint not to overdo it is really impressive.
Yeah, I completely agree. But that's part of the treasure that they were able to harness from having no deadline and just have both new staff and old just throw ideas out and see what stuck and see what was interesting and see what could be implemented upon. That's a big reason so much of this works so well. And speaking of that, let's talk development for a second. As always, you can find the full credits on the wiki, the IMDb, or you could just play the game and experience the wonderful credits sequence. But developed and published by Nintendo, no surprise there. Directed by Shiro Mori, who was a programmer with Nintendo since the late 90s. First full directing credit was on the new Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Bit of a mouthful. Produced by Takashi Tezuka, as well as Shinya Takahashi and Shintaro Furukawa. Art direction, Masanobu Sato. Couple composer credits here. Composers Shiho Fuji, Sayako Doi, and Chisaki Shimazu. And of course, the sound direction by none other than Koji Kondo, or as my autocorrect liked to do it, Koji London, which is what my notes say. I got the impression by reading that Fuji, that she was the lead composer here. If that's incorrect, I apologize, but Fuji has some really impressive credits on all of the Splatoon games, on Wii Fit, and most, if not all, of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, as well as Odyssey, which, to me, those are all very, very different. This is a very diverse composer.
Yeah, I assume Koji Kondo's credit may only be for the reinterpretations of the classic Mario music that he did back in the day.
Sure.
I'm not aware of him composing anything new for this. Maybe he did. I don't know. I think the music serves its purpose here. It's very Mario-y, right? It's, again, whimsical, colorful. I kind of miss the days, honestly, of the early Mario stuff because the technical limitations allowed for such short loops and such, even on the SNES, where it was kind of because of that limitation, it's well, it better be a friggin' earworm of the highest degree. And, it was. All that stuff is still great. I mean, I like the music in Wonder, but I do wish it had been a little more I walked out of it humming a few more of the tunes, in my head. It was a little more wallpapery for me, just kind of it's there, it's doing its job. But yeah, to me, it's the wonderment of this is less the music. The aesthetics are good, but it's really in the gameplay, in those, again, those inventive transformations where it shines.
Yeah, I mostly agree. We've got a section on sound and music coming up here in a sec. A few more stats to get through. This was announced at a Direct in June of 2023, and it was released that October. That's the sweet spot for me. Announce a game just a couple of months before it comes out. That's perfect. That is perfect. Chef's kiss. This got leaked online around a week before it got released. Full game, we're talking. ROMs. You could play this full game online. And this became a big talking point in Nintendo's recent major crackdown on emulation litigation, which is still a very contentious topic. My stance has always been that I don't see a problem with it at all. I think a lot of what Nintendo is... I'll say this. I think a lot of what Nintendo is doing is deleterious to the overall gaming landscape, and that's a real bummer that a lot of what's happening is from the snowball effect of Nintendo. They're vicious with their lawyers. They're just like Disney in that respect. But it is what it is. This did get leaked. That was a big part of it. As we said, a goal of this was to rekindle the discovery of secrets in the Super Mario Bros. Franchise, because there was a sentiment that the new Super Mario Brothers games were getting a bit stale. I can't speak to this, obviously. It sounds like you can't either, Doug, but this is a very popular sentiment that goes around. What I can say is that the little that I have seen, and I think I might have played like one level of the new Super Mario Bros. Like, that's it. What I've seen is it gives me the same feeling as I get when I look at like corporate art, you know, like the Google Doodle, not the Google Doodles because those are like real artists, but like I wish there's that corporate design where the people are like big and chunky with like no facial features and palette colors. Do you know what I'm talking about? I get that kind of feel when I look at the new Super Mario Bros. Games. It's very polished and sheen, but it's got like no personality to it. The music, I feel the same way. Oh my God. I hate that sound patch with the ba-ba. It sounds so soulless to me, but that's kind of what I get when I look at new Super Mario Brothers. I haven't played it. That's just my impression, but they wanted to change that up. Whether they were listening to the fans or felt that themselves, who's to say, but I think it's good that they did.
It's a copy of a copy of a copy.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what you're feeling, because I mean, in some ways it is, right? Again, this is a formula that has existed since the 80s. And so you do need to do something with it to revitalize it. So just simply having Mario and a set of different power-up suits that he wears to get through levels designed specifically for a Mario, what has those powers, by itself, it's not going to be bad. It's always still going to be like a B plus, right? Grading on the curve, I bet those games are still pretty fun. But they are going to feel, you know, especially with the lack of a story that Mario has, it's going to feel a little bit like, well, you know, I'm just jumping through an obstacle course again. It doesn't move you anyway. And that's why I think Wonder does such a good job of, again, you got to feel surprise around every corner. And that's what this does.
Yeah, I like that analogy too, a copy of a copy, just a facsimile after a facsimile each and every iteration. I have heard 3D World and Bowser's Fury especially are very good. I've got it downloaded on my Switch. Yeah. I just, haven't played it. I still got to play Super Mario World. What am I doing trying to play 3D World,
3D World and World do not, just because they share that name, they're not connected. 3D World is a little more like the new Super Mario Brothers stuff, as I recall. And I liked it enough. Bowser's Fury is better. It's more inventive in terms of it, changing up the format. It's a very good 3D Mario game, and it's a nice short length. It's kind of a snack. So yeah, I liked that one a bunch. So they're good. Like, I mean, that's the thing about Mario. Like, there's a certain level of like polish and quality that even in like the weaker Mario games, they're still going to be pretty solid, entertaining experiences. But Wonder is kind of one of the first ones in a long time, since probably Bowser's Fury, to make you kind of feel like, oh, okay, this feels like a proper new Mario game, as opposed to, hey, we're just marking time by releasing yet another one of these.
Totally. And all I meant, by the way, by that World comment is just that, Super Mario World is a titan, right? Not just one of the best Mario games, but widely considered one of the best SNES games, if not one of the best games of all time. All I meant was like, I haven't listened to Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and I'm over here trying to learn Glazonov's Saxophone Concerto, right? That's something that everybody can relate to, right? Like niche classical music pieces. I thought so. Okay,
sure,
perfect.
Got it.
We've kind of brushed up against musicals, of visuals. So let's talk about the visual presentation here. This is a return to squat, stout, little fat Mario, and I couldn't be happier. I love short, little, tiny, fat Mario. All of the characters here, which, by the way, I guess we should mention, you get to choose your character here. You have a plethora of characters to play as. The main ones are Mario, Luigi, Peach, Daisy, two Toads, yellow and blue, as well as Toadette. You can also play this game's like sort of easy mode as a couple of different colors of Yoshi and a Nabbit. Is that what they're called? I've never played those games.
I think
Nabbit. Those characters won't transform or get hurt, so it's like an easy mode. But everybody else plays as normal. You could freely swap between all of these during the overworld before you go right into a level, which I thought was very cool. And the visuals for all of these, when they're in their little form, their tiny form before they eat a mushroom, they're all short and squat and chubby, and I love it. I think that is such a good design for the Mario games. You know, when Mario, not that Odyssey and Galaxy and, you know, Smash doesn't look good. It does, but I just want my Mario to be a little guy, you know? Bring back Fat Pikachu, bring back Fat Mario. Just make my characters little tubby guys, you know?
Yeah, the character designs are great. You know, considering that, as you said, these are characters we're all familiar with at this point, right? They have a set design, just like, say, you know, like Mickey Mouse or whatever. Like there's a way they're supposed to look. But the world around them is very striking. They've done a great job with like this feeling of like, you know, you get this in the first few levels. Anywhere there's like kind of grass or like a kind of a carpet of like clovers over hills and things, they kind of shimmer as like the wind blows through them, and it makes everything kind of pop visually and feel alive in a way that looks great while still not being a distraction, which is, you know, that's tricky to pull off, to have something that they want you to notice and be beautiful without it getting in the way of you, like precisely jumping over a gap or, you know, landing on an enemy.
There are so many little touches like that throughout this whole game, in the environment and in the characters. It's almost like, where the hell do we start talking about this? We could probably talk about this alone for the next hour. The character animations, I don't know about you, but the character animations are what made me smile the most and the most consistently. I don't know if there's a word for this, Doug. Maybe you do, but there are, especially in newer games, or I mean, especially in like the PS2, PS3 era, you could always kind of tell when animators would take shortcuts. And I don't mean that derogatorily. I just mean like it would take way too long and too much manpower to fully animate everything. So let's just copy and paste this animation here. Let's use camera tricks. Let's, you know, do whatever, just so we could be pragmatic about it, not kill ourselves, but also get this game out. And you could always kind of tell, you know, just like in old cartoons, when you can tell something in the background is going to be interacted with by a cartoon character because it's like it's in the foreground, it pops a little more. It's not a background sort of palette. It's not the case here. Like, every little thing is animated. Every little animation looks exactly the same as every other little animation. When you go into the pipes, your character's hat, Mario and Luigi's hat, will kind of float off, and they reach out of the pipe to grab it, and then they go through. If you're in the elephant mode, which we haven't talked about just yet, and you go down a pipe, you kind of get stuck because elephants are big, they're fat, and then you squeeze and shimmy down, and then you go through. Even down to when you're ducking, Mario and Luigi will like hold their hat below their eyes and kind of move back and forth like that. Every little detail here is just so perfectly placed. It was really delightful. And that's just the characters too. I mean, there are so many instances with the backgrounds and the foregrounds, the grass, the sand, the enemies. Even down to like the Koopas and the Goombas, if they're coming towards you and they see you and they're like getting closer, their facial expressions change. Little touches like that just make this it makes it go from like a great to a really great. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's a matter of, like you said, they didn't have a deadline and they probably didn't have too much in the way of a budget. You know,
yeah.
They were just told,
yeah.
You know, you're doing the next big Mario game. Take your time, do what you want, man. We'll stand behind you 100%. And so sometimes that's bad. Sometimes for a creative team, you know, when you don't have limitations like that, you get bloated nonsense where like nobody's saying no, or, you know, sometimes, you know, it's often like the team that's very, very limited, you watch them come up with amazing stuff to surmount those limitations. That's usually the case. But here, though, it works because what that affords this team is the luxury to go like, you know, we have the time. We don't have to put this much flourish into an animation, but we can. So let's do it. Right. This is the kid in a candy store approach. And so, yeah, that is evident in every like image of this game that they're like, well, we could just make the Koopa walk at you, but as you said, we could also add like he cartoonishly gets a little frightened when he sees you getting close or whatever it happens to be. It's one more way in which the core philosophy comes through, which is what if we delighted and surprised you at every turn, right? The game feels very much alive in that it's like anticipating that in a way that like you probably wouldn't have noticed if those little things weren't there, but because they are there, you appreciate it that much more. It's like, oh, look at the craftsmanship on display. You spent the time and attention to put these little things in there, and cumulatively, because there's so many of them, they like raise the entire game a letter grade.
You would either not notice them, or you would notice them, but you wouldn't be able to put your finger on it. Like when, like when a song is missing something that's deep in the mix, like a bass or something, I don't know. You could tell something's gone, but you just can't put your finger on it. I think it's the same here. I think you're exactly right about that. You saying that occasionally that sort of abundance philosophy that let's do no deadlines, let's throw as many things at this as we can to see what sticks, that can cause bloat. I have to say, a thought that I had is that, everything at this point, especially in game development, does come down to money in some aspect, right? Like it would be Pollyanna-ish and naive to say that profits weren't a consideration here. Of course they are. But I do feel like the Mario team, especially the folks developing Mario, are probably... and I hesitate to speak declaratively here. Like, don't quote me on this, but probably like some of the best balance I've ever seen in a team when it comes to like design for profit and design just for themselves. It's like it's they're considering the profits, but they also, as you said, are those kids in the candy store. They're doing it for the love of the game and the love of the art form. And it's like, well, if we don't have a deadline, let's just do whatever we can. Let's make the game we would want to play. Again, profits, yeah, absolutely. Like it's Nintendo. They're one of the biggest corporations on the planet. Of course they're thinking of profits, but at the same time, this team, I feel bad. There's probably a genre of listener that's going to listen to this episode and think like, well, this is just, them sugar talking this whole game. I'm out of here. I want criticism. And it's like, if that's you, I'm really sorry to say, but yeah, this isn't the episode for you. This is going to be a lot of like talking up this game and just about all of the amazing times we've had with it. It's really great.
I have criticisms of it. It's not perfect, but sure. That's fine. But what you're talking about, I see that with like some of the best film directors too, where like, like the best Spielberg stuff has this, right? Where there's like clearly stuff in this movie where like Steven Spielberg just thought to himself, it'd be really funny, or like we would really mess with the audience. What if we did this? Or like think of a director like Joe Dante, who did like Gremlins and Inner Space and like some of these really weird films where you go like, this shouldn't work. It's bonkers, but it's in the film because they thought it was weird and funny. And my feeling on stuff like that is like, maybe that stuff doesn't work 9 times out of 10. I don't care. Give me that 10th thing. I'll take the 9 failures to get that 10th weird thing. And that's what you see here. Like it's a creative team, indulging their creative juices with the luxury of being able to do that with, like I said, virtually unlimited time and resources. Like I said, they threw out 2,000 ideas, for level design, right? I'm sure that's true of the art and everything else. They're picking the best stuff. So, as we'll talk about some of the things in the game that I don't think came together as perfectly as they could, but this philosophy is like what gets it as far as it gets. Like that, so few games get to do this level of just, again, joyful expression that you see on display here.
And some of those ideas that they threw out weren't home runs, and they did fail. Not everything was that 10th thing. Most notably, one thing that I saw they wanted to include at one point was a sort of like live commentary on the gameplay that you were doing, like a sports style commentary. Which,
oh God, no.
Yeah, as somebody on the outside, like, I don't even know, they would have to record so many lines just for because, if this team were to do that, they wouldn't just half-ass it. And I can imagine that would just take so much time and programming and voice recording. That's how we got those flowers, which, I mean, I guess we could talk about them in visuals. I don't know where else we would put them other than like story talk, but this game has a lot of these little flower dudes. They don't look that different from the flower power up, but they are sentient. They speak. They're kind of like Nintendo's Greek chorus, always giving little pithy quips and little jokes or words of encouragement to the player when you pass them. I'll be honest, there's way too many of them. Like, I think they're there for the kids, right? I think this is most definitely a kid decision that kind of grew out of that sports commentary thing. I don't know. I've heard them referred to as embarrassing. I wouldn't go that far, but there's way too many of them for me, and they've always got something to say. They're always getting the last word in every scene, and it was just a little too much. Like after the third world, I think I was like, I'm really done with you guys. I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah, some of them are funny. Some of them are legitimately very funny. There's like one, I think, where you're like in one of the wonder sequences, and then the wonder sequence ends and you're like falling, and he's like falling alongside you, just like, oh God, screaming his head off. Like, there's funny moments with them, but there's so many of them, and they just don't have enough stuff to say. Some of them are literally just like, way to go, Mario. And like, I've heard that 30 times now. It's not adding anything. So I wouldn't call them embarrassing. I just think they needed to show more restraint as to when to use them. If the writing was better on all of them, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. Mm-hmm. I think, fewer of them used better and they would have been fine. Certainly we don't need the John Madden commentary for the game. That would have been horrible.
Who knew John Madden would come up in this episode? Hell yeah.
I mean, he's running over a pit of spikes and he jumps on a turtle and boom.
Like that's what it would sound like for an entire game. It'd be horrendous.
Those little flowers will also give you clues if you missed something, like a wonder seed. Wonder seeds, I think we got to save till we talk about the gameplay itself. But if you miss something, if you miss a hidden block, a hidden area, a wonder seed, they'll always sort of say the same thing, like, are you sure you're not missing something, or something to that effect. Or if there's like an area that seems inaccessible, they might say something like, I wonder how you get there. They're always giving you a little nudge if you missed something. Or my personal least favorite, if you're doing like a challenge level, they've got these badge challenges that we'll talk about too. Sometimes if you mess up once or twice, they'll say, just breathe. Just breathe. And I was like, brother, that's having the opposite effect. You got to stop that right now.
Yeah. Like I said, they're fine. Fewer of them, more interesting banter from them would have gone a long way. Because in the times it works, especially towards the beginning of the game where you're not used to having these as part of Mario, like to all of a sudden have this voice pop in and say something clever, like it's great. It just wears out its welcome.
Yeah. Here. Before we hop off of visuals, like there's a lot to say about visuals. Don't get me wrong. If I already said this, forgive me for repeating myself, but this is far and away the best looking game I think I've personally played on my Switch. Like there's a lot of talk about the Switch being underpowered. I'm one of them. I'm one of the people that says that I was disappointed by the hardware of the Switch and some of the game performances. But that being said, Nintendo knows how to optimize for their own system and work around that. This game, especially on the Switch OLED, looks simply incredible. It is some of the best looking video gameplay I've ever seen. It's stylized, it's crisp. It really makes the OLED sing. I didn't want to get out of this section before saying that. Like, credit where it's due. This looks phenomenal.
Yeah, I played it docked on a 4K TV. I usually prefer to play docked anyway because I just like to be able to see what I'm doing and not hold it in my hands as much. So I don't have the OLED Switch. So I played it plenty handheld. It looked great on the basic Switch. But on a big TV, like it really pops And that's important because, again, this is all about visual readability for Mario. It's a platformer. You got to be able to see where you're going. And, we are looking for secrets and trying to, make sure you read what's happening in the level. It is as, crisp and clear as it could be. And again, like the flourishes we've been talking about, they all really like sing because of that added, attention to detail and fidelity. Like all those little ways things shimmer and move. It's hard to describe in a podcast or even in a screenshot. You kind of have to see it in motion to really appreciate just how beautiful this is and how well it's put together.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. And that all aids in the level design too. Something that I was thinking about having come off of Super Mario Bros. 3 is the level design, you could tell, has changed. That philosophy has changed over time. Not for the good and not for the ill. It's just changed. It doesn't have to be a value judgment. But the level design, and in particular the level mapping and the level's ability to navigate you around, is so different in these newer games. It's a lot more straightforward. But that being said, it's not obnoxiously straightforward, and I think in part that's due to how this is visually presented, the colors, the layout, everything. It looks really terrific. Yeah, I don't want to go on too long and just repeat myself, but level design, I don't know. How are you feeling about level design? You have more experience than me with the NES, SNES era too. Even beyond Mario World, Yoshi's Island, I'm sure, things like that. What's your feeling on the level design here in Wonder compared to especially some of those golden era Marios?
It really borrows heavily from Super Mario World, I think, as far as the way levels are laid out, the pathfinding. This is very much of a piece with World. It starts with 3. Because Super Mario Brothers 2, Doki Doki Super Mario Brothers 2, has verticality in it that the original Super Mario Brothers did not. Super Mario Brothers 3 takes that one step further by giving you the power of flight and making, flying through the vertical spaces of levels a critical part of the exploration. But there's still, even though you have more verticality, a fairly left to right affair. Mario World does much more, not only vertical stuff, but also like exploration into those spaces in different directions, down pits that actually lead somewhere as opposed to being bottomless, pipes that go to interesting places. And here they really amp it up by not only doing that, but sometimes you actually go down a pipe and find yourself in the background of a level. That's always a fun gimmick. Or the foreground.
I loved that. Yes.
Every time that happened, I was delighted. I was like, oh, good. We get to do that again. Even though functionally I'm doing the same exact thing, just smaller and in the background. For some reason, it just feels like, like I'm 9 years old again. You did something fun for me. But yeah, the level design fitting into like what we were talking about with visibility, like you need to have a sense of where am I supposed to go, especially if you're trying to hunt for the Wonder Flower or some other secret exit. You learn to get a sense of like, oh, that wall doesn't look like the other walls. Something's not right there. Or, I can see a platform up there, and if I think about it, I bet I can suss out how to get to it. So this level design approach, like that was the thing that most made me feel like confident in what they were doing, which was like, this is like level to level, much more like Super Mario World than it is anything else. And if you're going to try and copy something, go for the best. By and large, I think they succeed in that endeavor.
Yeah, I think they do too. I'm looking forward to getting to Super Mario World. I just didn't have the time, but I am excited to check it out. That going from the foreground to the background, I agree with you. It delighted me every time. I only encountered this once. It might only happen once. Maybe it happens more. There are instances where you start off in the background, but you don't know it, and then you go down a pipe and suddenly you're in the foreground. I love that. I love that so much. Those little perspective shifts. There are also a few areas in the game where it switches to a top-down perspective too, with the power of the Wonder Seed, which is just absolutely terrific. They're taking that design philosophy that you had mentioned that started with 3 and was really polished in World, of exploring all axes, X, Y, and Z, of any given level, and I love to see it implemented. Of course, I mean, that's a little easier to do in 3D games because, well, they're 3D. What's really cool is whenever you have that limitation of 2D and then, it gets them to think, how are we going to do this? Maybe we put them in the background, or maybe what if we just go top down all of a sudden? There you go. That's cool. And you get these really novel levels and sections. Just so terrific. So terrific.
Yeah, I mean, exploration is one of the most like core motivating things we have as Homo sapiens, right? This need to explore. And you think about works like Flatland, right? The story of a literal two-dimensional shape who encounters three-dimensional space for the first time, or going through the wardrobe to Narnia. Like the developers of Myst, for example, talked about that as being a core principle for them of like, we want you to feel like you're constantly stepping through another wardrobe behind another wardrobe. And Mario does that here too. It's the same thing of just like, how, what if, the world tilted on its axis and suddenly things were top down? Surprise! They love doing that. And I think that this game, more than any other Mario game in recent memory, gets back to that.
We talked around this a little bit, but I'd like to focus on it now for a moment. Let's talk a little bit about the sound design and the music. We could start with the music since we're kind of picking up where we left off there. This is going to be familiar to you if you have been in the Mario game universe for any length of time. There are going to be synth patches for strings, guitar, brass, and notably mallet percussion. Your xylophones and marimba, things of that nature, congos, bongos, and various other sorts of percussion that aren't just drum sets. This game took, I don't know when this started. I can't confidently say that. I know it happened in 3D World with Bowser's Fury, but Bowser is now represented by a distorted electric guitar, which gets a little metal at times, which is pretty cool. The music as a whole, like, I don't see it as that sort of copy of a copy of a copy as like what we talked a little bit about before. I don't see it so much as a facsimile here. It didn't move me in the way that Galaxy's soundtrack moved me. Which to this day is my favorite Mario far and away, in a galaxy far, far and away. That's like 3 episodes in a row now with Star Wars references. Jeez, I'm not even like the biggest Star Wars fan. I don't know what it is.
It's too big. It just has too much gravity. It's gonna snag you.
Yeah, too much gravity. Yeah, good one. I liked the music in this. I did come away humming some of them. There's like it's not quite a 12-bar blues, but it's pretty close. In one of the flower challenges, one of the badge challenges, that's kind of bluesy-ish a little bit, but not quite. I liked that quite a bit. And I did like the, I don't know if it's the overworld theme or if it's one of the 6 world themes. I'm going to put it in here. It's not so earwormy as Super Mario Bros. 3 or Super Mario Bros. 1 or even Galaxy or 64. I don't think it's quite to that level, but I did really enjoy it. It's very, in general, it's very fast-paced. There's not a lot of slow, pretty tracks on this. Generally, everything's going to be walking speed or higher. So that might be a con to some folks, but yeah, I don't know. I really liked the music. Thought it was fun.
I think it's functional. Like it's not bad. It's good. I think the moments when the Wonder Seed kicks in is generally where you're going to see the more standout tracks, which is again not surprising since they're trying to grab your attention with those things. As you said, the metal stuff for Bowser is kind of fun, especially when we get to his stage. And everything is kind of, the theming is a hair metal rock concert, which is pretty fun. So I like that. The as you said, the Piranha Plant musical stuff. There are some levels where timing is really important, and they use the music to help you with that. Like you can basically feel the metronome you need to know when to jump or do things. Those are great. I have mixed feelings about the mechanics of those levels, but musically, like the way they help you, I think is a good touch. Like I said, overall, I like the music. I love the sound design. I think annoying flowers aside, I think the way they incorporate classic sounds from these enemies and things, or Mario's just universe that we're so used to hearing, is really great. There are some levels where they literally will. There's like those little they call them break time levels or whatever they're called, but it's just like here, like no challenge at all. This is just we just want you to have a little fun for 45 seconds. Some of them are musical in nature, and the music is literally lifted from Super Mario World or 3 or some of these older games. So they do a really good job of incorporating Mario's sound library into this game in a way that is still whimsical.
I really liked some of those stages that use the music to encourage you or to give you the map on how to move. Some of them, honestly, there wasn't any challenge. It was just, all right, just make sure you jump on beat so you can get shot up into the air and keep, progressing up the level, vertically. I like that a lot. And then, of course, the entire end fight with Bowser is all musically centered, which I thought was a bold decision, ending with what is essentially like a rhythm boss fight. Very bold move. We can maybe talk about that fight here in a sec, but I generally, most of these worked for me, and I think it's a combination of how it's presented and then the music being very good. The fact that they weren't very difficult or maybe mechanically weren't as inspired. Personally, I forgive that just because I thought the experience was very fun. I could see how folks might not like that though, especially if you're looking for something that's, maybe a little bit more than just, all right, press the button on the beat. Good job. But, it's fine.
I don't say I don't have a problem with that. It's like, again, that goes back to the well, this isn't challenging. It's just a lot of fun. And it's like, right. It's challenging to hike the real Matterhorn, but riding the one at Disneyland is also really fun just because it's not hard to do. It's okay to just, get your fun out of a different aspect of experiencing a game. It doesn't have to be hard to be a good time.
Yeah, we're not all doing challenge runs of Super Mario World in those ridiculous, I don't even know, custom maps, what you would call that. Challenge runs is the best thing that I can think of.
All the stuff that people make in Mario Maker that are, nightmares.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. I don't know how people do that. A lot of dedication.
The answer is I was going to say, you're seeing the 50,000th attempt at it.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Speaking of the sound design, though, this goes back to them adding in just little flourishes and grace notes where you might not notice them if they weren't there, but having them there is just the sprinkles on the icing on the cake. Did you notice that everybody's jump sound is different? Each character has a different jump pitch.
I only played as Mario and Luigi. I didn't go playing with all the different characters so much, but I did notice, there's a slight difference. And even just hearing their voices, right, throughout the experience, it's not Charles Martinet anymore, it's his replacement, but whoever it is does a pretty good job of continuing on those legacy voices. But right, there's all those little things that are slightly different from character to character. There's little things around the world that just make noise sometimes just for the sake of literally the fun of I'm a toddler and I bonked a thing with another thing and it made a fun sound. They're putting that in there. It's everywhere so that there's not a moment wasted where they're not trying to delight you with something like that. And you can, as we've alluded to this, but you can play this multiplayer where not like old school Mario where you take a turn and I take a turn, but you can have multiple people on screen at the same time, which means that you could have kind of that chorus of different sounds is not only, fun for the like I said, the whimsy, but it actually helps differentiate, even if you're not acutely aware of it, who's doing what and when. if you were sitting with a bunch of players trying to do it at the same time.
Yeah, totally. That I actually did not realize that or think of that until you mentioned it. And that's because I didn't engage with the multiplayer on this. Not because I don't think it's a cool idea. It's just, I don't know. I don't really have, I don't play a lot of games with other people. Did you play multiplayer in this game at all?
I haven't. I would be curious to try that out with my kids. If they like games. They're not as gung ho on it as me. But like they tend to play things like Mario Kart. They're not shown a huge interest in a lot of things like platforming. I think they would find that pretty challenging, and I don't know if this is the game I would start them on with it, or would they want to start with, the old school stuff. But I at some point I would love to have enough controllers to do it. Like, hey, why don't we all sit and play this game together and see how it goes with everybody jumping around? And my son would lose his mind anytime he dies. I think he would just be crying. So we have to wait till they're ready for this. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's clearly designed with that in mind. And it's I wish I could comment on that aspect of the game. I'm sure someone's listening to this going like, oh man, when you do this in multiplayer, it's totally different. I can't speak to that experience though.
Speaking of the inspiration they took from Super Mario World, and I haven't confirmed this. I think I heard this on Triple Click podcast or whatever. But I have heard that if you're playing 2-player or multiplayer and one of the characters is Yoshi, you can get on that character and ride Yoshi like you could in Super Mario World. Which I think that's great. I think that's where that was introduced, right? In World?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Yoshi. I know there's some technically they introduced Yoshi in some earlier game. I don't know if he's in Mario Golf or something. Like he's in the background, but really Yoshi is that's the innovation for Super Mario World. He in Super Mario 3, they're constantly throwing all kinds of weird different power-ups at you, and in World they scale that back and just go. Mostly there's the flying cape, the fire flower, and Yoshi. That's what you got.
Yeah. And with Yoshi not taking damage and also not transforming, I can imagine that would be just really cute to see an elephant Mario on top of a Yoshi. I think that'd be nice. Who knows
if he could survive? If his spine could survive it. Yeah.
yeah. He's engineered to handle that kind of a weight. Little fact about Yoshis: they're made in a lab. Sorry, kids.
Yep.
You had mentioned the voice actor. That's true. I don't think this was controversy. I think it was just a lot of folks. It was a mixture of some folks being disappointed and then a lot of folks feeling the way that I did, that, Charles Martinet has been a treasure and has been putting in the work for decades now. Let the man rest. This game, Mario and Luigi, were voiced by a gentleman named Kevin Afghani, who didn't before this had some Switch commercial overdubs and I think Genshin Impact, but no big ticket credit items. So this was really the first one. I think he does a fine job. If you really listen closely, you can tell it's not the same.
Mario number one!
Mario number one!
Let's go! All right!
All right!
But I was never taken out of it. I think he does a perfectly fine job. And now, now, quote unquote, this was confirmed right after, but he's voicing Wario and Waluigi too in some games that they're in. So he's picking up the reins from the king.
I mean, that's just the case with all legacy voices. Eventually, the person dies or retires, and we have to find a new Bugs Bunny. You can't dig Mel Blanc up anymore, and you just find someone who does the best impression that they can, and you hope that they do not only embody the voice but also the character. And yeah, for my money, he does a great job. I hardly noticed it. That it was he's barely any different. He does a good job.
It's a very close approximation. And that's an unfortunate truth that a lot of folks don't think about, is our voices don't stop changing after puberty. That's the joke, is that, one day you're up here and then the next day you're down here. But it changes as you go throughout life. I mean, talk to any opera singer and they'll be telling you oh yeah, I've got to sing this role before my voice changes in my late 30s. And, I'd like to do this before my voice changes again in my 50s. And it's just a nonstop evolution of the body. So,
have you watched The Simpsons lately?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, dude. I feel so bad for Marge's voice actress. Her voice has been throttled.
Yeah. Julie Kavner always sounded kind of raspy, but now she's getting up there and it's hard.
Even Dan Castellaneta sounds a little different. Like you can definitely hear it. Oh, it's sad. It's sad. It makes me realize that time never ends. It never stops for any of us.
Nope. No one gets out alive.
Oh my gosh. Geez, stay tuned for Outer Wilds where we get into more existential crises.
This is not the game for existential horror. Yeah.
No, this game should make you feel happy. Happy tears only. No, Kevin does a fantastic job. I think the Peach and Daisy voice actress, I think the Peach and Daisy voice actor sounds different to me, but I've also not played any games where they were voiced for a few years, so I don't know. They did a great job too. I mean, everybody does fine. This isn't a very talky game. You're really only hearing them make their grunts and here we goes, and it's a me's, and that's about it. Oh, and wowie zowie. Everybody says wowie zowie. That's like the catchphrase of this game.
Yeah, I mean, look, they could have tried to, I guess, leverage the cast from the movie to doing it. You know, they could have gone in that direction. But they didn't. They decided we're going to go for, continuity of like the classic voices from the games everyone knows. And I think that's a good decision.
Yes. Yeah. I could not imagine this game with Chris Pratt and, as much as I like him, Charlie Day. Cannot imagine that.
Be a lot of Charlie Day voice. He's a particularly grating voice, so it'll be hard.
Yeah. Well, let's not beat around it. Let's talk through the game. I mean, the best way to talk about this game is through its mechanics, because that is the game. Different from other Pixel Project Radio episodes, we're not going to talk about the plot because we kind of summarized it at the beginning. And we're also not going to go through and talk about every single level. I started taking notes that way and quickly realized that that's a fool's errand. We're not going to do that either. We're just going to talk at a global scale about all of this. The game starts up, as I mentioned before, Bowser is kind of shitting up the place. He steals our Wonder Seed, and he is planning to unleash a big wonder. We don't know what that means until the very end. What we're going to do... Oh gosh, what's the prince's name? Florian. We are going around with this little bug guy, right? Named Prince Florian.
Yeah, it's like you're not in the Mushroom Kingdom anymore. You're in the Flower Kingdom next door. Visiting when Bowser decides, I've ruined the Mushroom Kingdom enough times. Why don't I try and ruin this nice place?
Yeah, and Prince Florian is going to accompany us around as we get these Wonder Seeds. Functionally, they're just a MacGuffin. They can kind of do whatever the story needs. For us, the Wonder Seeds are going to let us progress to get the Royal Wonder Seeds, which can dispel some of Bowser's defenses to let us, get to the final level. We're going to go through the Flower Kingdom and interact with this little race of poplins. They kind of look like cousins to toads. I mean, they look very related, but they're cute. You'll run into them. They'll help you through. They kind of extort you. They're like, oh yeah, you could get through the next levels, but I just don't have the energy to build this bridge. And then you pay them and immediately they're like, oh wow, look at that motivation. So there's a little of that. And they give you some Wonder Seeds too. They're just, they're the little supporting cast. They're fine. They're cute.
Yeah, as you said, it's picture a toad, but instead of a mushroom-based hat, it looks more like the steeples on that Russian, was it St. Peter's Basilica in Moscow?
Yeah, I was thinking
swirly kind of pointy things.
I was thinking a flower that hasn't bloomed yet, but sure, yeah. we could do Russian St. Peter's Basilica. That works.
And as you said, there's an economy in this game. There's a standard gold coins that, as always, 100 of them gets you a free life. And then there's these purple crystals, and then in each level there's 3 big purple flower crystals that are worth 10. And your goal is, if you want to, you can try and collect all 3 of them in every level. But you're not going to be hurting for these. You're going to be swimming in these little things, but they are the currency that you use. So when the guy says, I'm going to extort you to build this bridge, it's going to cost 20 of these. And you're like, I've got 920 of them.
Yeah.
Take it. This is never a barrier to you making progress.
Yeah. These folks are all hurting for 50 coins, 20 coins, and Mario just comes in. He's in a different class strata, clearly.
Right.
You can buy it at these little poplin shops is what they're called. You can buy extra lives. You can buy wonder seeds if you just, this game is just like any other Mario game. You don't have to do every single level and get every single wonder seed to progress. I didn't do the math offhand, but you don't need to do every single one if there's a level giving you trouble. You can buy wonder seeds. You can also buy badges. And that comes into a pretty important mechanic of the game. There are a couple of different styles of level. There's your standard level. There's a subsection of that does a wonder seed, that uses wonder seeds. We'll talk about those too here in a sec. There are break levels, which are just kind of like fun mini games. And there are badge challenges. You get to equip a badge through Prince Florian, who just kind of lives in your hat, in every single level. And some of the levels that are badge challenges will force you to use a special badge. So you, instead of picking one, it picks for you. These badges are going to mostly give you special abilities by hitting the right shoulder button. Sometimes they just give you inherent abilities, though. I'm just going to kick it to you. In general, what did you think of these?
Well, to borrow the phrase, we don't need no stinking badges. No, we do actually. These are good. They basically function like a ring slot, in a RPG, right? And there are different classes of them. So some of them affect your movement. Some of them kind of affect the world around you. So there's one that reveals blocks that would otherwise be not there, which can be helpful. Maybe it helps you get over a gap that would be harder to jump without them, or climb up to an area that would otherwise be harder to access. There's one that it's literally like a metal detector. It beeps when you're near where a secret is. So there's a bunch of different kinds of these, and some of them have very kind of specific applications where there's a level where you don't have to use it, but you're probably going to want to have this badge for this level. And you can only have one at a time. Now, there were certain badges that, because they were more all-purpose useful, I had on more than others. So say the badge that lets you float down, control your descent like a parachute, or like I said, the one for the secret blocks or things like that. But then there's ones that there's that one that's like a vine that's a grappling hook that's really fun.
That's my favorite one.
I had a great time with that. That one's so good that basically it almost turns Mario into a Metroid game or something. Yeah. It's really cool. So these are great. It's one more way in which, just again, going back to Mario 3, it's a way for the game designers to say here, you play with this toy however you feel like playing with it. And so I think overall this is a success. There's a handful of them I kind of wish you could it really was like Metroid, it was a power up that you got and then you kept, rather than having to, because you can't take them on or off mid level. You have to, you pick one and then you start, and you can't switch in between. If you die, you can go out and change and come back. But yeah, it's, I think other than those little tweaks I would make, because some of them are, I don't want to keep this equipped all the time, that they're a little flawed. But like I said, by and large, this works really well.
Yeah, I like the analogy of them being toys, and you can play with them however you'd like and mix and match in the levels. What makes them so successful to me is they all aid in that design philosophy that you had mentioned and that I had mentioned, this idea of exploration. The very first one that you get lets you use your hat as a parachute, and it lets you kind of glide a little bit farther with your jumps and descend a little slower. Talk about animations, dude. Oh, it looks so cute and good when they do that. They grab their hat. If you're playing as a character that doesn't have a hat, like Peach, Daisy, and Toad, because those are not, that is explained in the game in the load screens. Those are their heads, not their hats. But they pull out just a color-coordinated Mario hat. It's very cute. It's really cool, but it lets you explore areas and make jumps that you maybe otherwise couldn't. Or another one that was really useful is you can wall jump in this game, where you can jump onto a wall and then you sort of kick off of it, right? That's nothing new, but there is a badge that lets you jump onto a wall and then do one vertical jump up the wall, and then that lets you then kick off the wall. So you can now explore vertically even more. And it lets you access areas of stages where you might not see it, but you can see your little character moving up top through the little magnifying glass that shows you where you're at, sort of like in Smash. Really terrific. And then, of course, like you mentioned, the Vine chain shot. That is just so much fun. It turns it into like Metroid, Spider-Man, Zelda, Hookshot is what I meant to say. So much fun.
Spider-Man is a good, that's a good analogy too, that it's Spider-Man. These are all great. And like I said, by and large, they're additive. And in some cases, there are definitely levels where you look at it and go like, I bet if I equip this one thing, this would make this a whole lot easier. And you're usually right.
That's a win for this too, in my opinion. There are going to be some folks that say this game is really short. Like I think my end time, and I did not get every Wonder Seed, full disclosure, but my end time was like, I don't know, based on how Switch does it, it's not super accurate, like 6 hours, 6.5 hours, something like that. I'm not far and away, I'm not the fastest, but I'm also not the worst, pretty average. You can go back and re-explore some of these levels and get to new areas by mixing and matching these power-ups. Maybe in one level, once you're good enough at the magma levels, you don't need the badge that lets you fall into the magma once and then it just kicks you out for free. Maybe you don't need that, and now you can add in the timed super jump ability, that we saw, actually, now that I think about it, as early as Donkey Kong 94, where if you time your jumps, landing them properly and jumping again, you jump even higher. Maybe you use that badge instead, and now you're at a whole different level, a different part of the level. It encourages replayability and exploration. I love it. I think that's great. Really fun, really terrific. Some of them I didn't get much use for, and some of them are situational. Dolphin Kick is one that you can use underwater that makes you kick like a dolphin. Made underwater levels not a slog, which, I personally never like an underwater Mario level. At least not in the 2D ones that I've played. This made it much more bearable. I still did not like the underwater levels as much. Kind of a pain, especially those big cheeps that just eat you. Which actually, am I thinking of 3? Am I getting those mixed up?
Shit. They're in 3.
Yeah, those bugged me in there too. But some of them are situational. Like there's one that I don't remember exactly how it works. The badge icon is a block with an exclamation point. It like reveals hidden blocks around you.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe this is why I didn't collect every Wonder Seed, but I didn't get a ton of use out of that one. I don't know. Some of them aren't MVPs. They can't all be, because that would, if everybody's an MVP, nobody is. But I did not even collect all of them by the end. I'm easily missing like, I don't know, 6, 7, 10.
I think in my first playthrough, I got all of them except the last one, which you have to. That's the reward for beating every level, getting every Wonder Seed, and doing the last tricky challenge level, which I didn't. And I think it's dumb too. I forget what it is. It's like it's not useful at all. By the time you've again completed the entire game, what else are you gonna do? I think I got most of them, and like I said, most of them I found a use for here and there, and some I had pretty regularly, equipped with like, well, I don't need anything special, but I'm glad I got this one with me right now. Whether it's there was like a controlled double jump, something like that. That's like, this is going to be generally useful a lot.
Mm-hmm. The controlled double jump one is really good. There's also a what is it? You do like the Princess Peach one in the older games, like in I think even Doki Doki 2.
You can float.
Yeah, the float jump. There's a lot to experiment with. But those are just one aspect of the mechanics. I mean, we also have the titular Wonder Seeds and the Wonder levels. This, to me, is like this game's bread and butter. That's the calling card. That's what it shows you on the tin. It's why you come to this game. It's what you bought the ticket for, yeah. Yeah, any number of analogy that you might like to use. Mm-hmm. I almost universally loved every single one of these, whether you're transforming or not.
Well, sometimes you transform, sometimes the level transforms. Whatever it is, it's going to be, as we said, we can't go through all of these, but they're wildly inventive. There's some where you're floating through the air and like you're trying to catch falling invincibility stars to go through electrical barriers as you continue to float upwards. It just basically it's an entire new gameplay mode in the guise of a drug trip. Like the whole thing, like literally when you get the Wonder Star, the whole screen like shimmers in like rainbow energy. The music distorts, just like, and then like, oh boy, we're gonna go into some kind of weird dream sequence basically. And that's what they all are, and they don't like we've mentioned some of the different types, but like they never cease to delight, and it's almost a disservice to talk about them because it's like that's the fun. It's like every time you pull one of these, it's like, what's it going to be that comes out of the slot machine? And again, the greatest thing about this is there's none of these gimmicks that's used more than twice. So you're almost guaranteed to, you're seeing something you loved the first time around one more time for an encore, or something brand new.
Some of them are really not challenging either. It's just about the spectacle. It's about they're taking the Mario Galaxy approach versus the Odyssey approach, where they want a specific experience for the level first and foremost. And I can appreciate that. That's part of why I love Galaxy so much. But you might get the Wonder Seed, and suddenly you're running on stampeding bulls that are flying through the sky. And all you have to do is stay on and, jump to get some coins or whatever. Or it might start raining invincibility stars and you just book it and go. Which, by the way, they run in the same animation as they do from Super Mario Brothers 3, which I liked a lot. I like that little animation. But then sometimes, too, it transforms everything. And that is... those levels are the ones that always had me just... ear to ear smiling. You transform into one of them that I like the most is there are these enemies. I think this is in the Sunbaked Desert, World 4. It might be in World 3, Shining Falls. But there are these enemies that kind of look like little rodent guys, gophers. And when they see a Goomba, their mouth opens real big and they eat them. And the whole level, you're like, look at those dumb Goombas. Get eaten, Goombas. And then you hit the Wonder Seed and you're a Goomba now. And you have to stay away from those things by hiding behind trees. That is just so terrific. It's like if you showed this game to a kid and the kid was like, what if you could do that? And as an adult, we've lost that kind of childlike wonder. That's the only time I'll use that, by the way. And we don't think that creatively, but they are. Another one that I really liked is, and this one, to its credit, does show up a couple times, I think. You turn into a sticky blob thing that can like hug surfaces. And suddenly it's not just about jumping onto platforms and across platforms, you're hugging the entire perimeter and it's winding you through the level in a way that you could not do before, all while still collecting coins and dodging enemies and stuff like that. That's just so cool, man. Like it's like you just said, Doug, it's almost a disservice to talk about it. Which is unfortunate for an auditory medium like the podcast, but it's like you said, this is why you bought the ticket. It's so awe-inspiring, and so it just kicked me out of the creative rut that I sometimes feel like whenever I'm in my 50th JRPG grinding, and it's just like, this is just such a breath of fresh air.
And I think that's what it's designed to be, right? This is meant to be a breath of fresh air. It is, again, it's the Angry Sun level of Super Mario Brothers 3, which that's just one I'm pinging on. There's many game levels like that in 3 where they did just that, where it's like, I don't know, what if you get to hop inside a weird shoe for a level? Just one, though. We're just going to do it once. You don't need it more than once. And that's what they're doing here, right? It's every single one of these, whether they're turning you into a Goomba or a blob, or they're turning, as you said, it goes all of a sudden you're in a top-down perspective and like you're walking on the background elements.
Yeah.
You're a shadow that's, again, you're this stretchy gummy bear shadow.
Yeah,
where, when you duck, everything else in the environment like ducks down too. So you're not only managing being this like black silhouette against a bunch of other black silhouettes, but you're managing the height of the objects in the level while you're ducking. Just weird stuff, really weird, really you can't do this in any other series for the most part. Like even things like Sonic the Hedgehog, if you're going to do this, like there's a certain like reality to and consistency to his world where like Mario's a little more of a Looney Tune where it's like, I don't know, anything goes. Think of like Duck Amuck, right? The classic Looney Tunes cartoon where Daffy is walking around trying to perform as the animator is fucking with him and like redrawing him in the environment. Like that's basically what this is, except it's, now it's Nintendo and company doing that to you as you're trying to make your way through this level. And like, you just got to grin from ear to ear while they're doing it, because you're like, what'll they think of next? Like that is the fun of it. So yeah, and still you get to do all your other classic Mario stuff, as we've alluded to. There's a couple of basic power ups that you use here and there, and you couple that with the badges, and it's like, there's no end to kind of the way that you get to creatively interact with their creativity.
Yeah. First of all, great pull. I love Duck Amuck. That is so good, and that comes from the. I'm reading a book right now called The Inner Game of Tennis. I'm rereading it. I've read it years ago. Amazing book, not just for tennis players. I don't play tennis. Look at me. Jeez, can you imagine me running across the court? No, I can't. But it's more about mental performance in any host of things. But anyways, a big part of Timothy Galway's mentality is quieting what he calls self one, which is the critical voice, so that your self two, i.e. in this context, your body, can just do what it knows how to do without that critic in you. And we can extrapolate that a little bit. I think this kind of creativity comes from that. When we talk about childlike creativity, getting in touch with your inner child and casting aside the shackles of the limitations we set upon ourselves as we grow up in this world, for good or for ill, that's how we get there, is by casting out this self-one, doubter, critical voice. That's a whole different topic. It's made me think of that. I loved it. Let's talk a little bit about those power-ups, though, because that's another big point of this game, and mixing and matching those with the badges. I mean, let's not mince words. It's just a hell of a lot of fun, okay? I will say, this game's flagship power-up is the elephant. What I thought was interesting, I don't remember which director said this. Maybe it was Tezuka. I'm not quite sure. Or maybe it was Miyamoto, actually, now that I'm thinking of it. Maybe it was Miyamoto. They said that it didn't feel like a Mario character. It didn't look like a Mario character, like how they envisioned it. I have mixed feelings about the elephant. You get it more often, I think, than any other power-up. And it's certainly useful. I mean, you're not all that much slower. Your trunk can be used as a weapon as you're running, which is useful. Can suck up water and hydrate plants or put out fires, which is useful in like 1 or 2 stages. But I don't know. For as often as they gave it to you, I would have rather had the flower power, the fire flower power up. That's just my favorite. Next to the drill power up. I love the drill power up, man. Is that new to Wonder, Doug? Do you know?
I believe so. I mean, I don't have the most encyclopedic knowledge of Mario, but I believe that other than the classic fire flower, the other 3 you get are the elephant, the drill, and the bubble flower. I think those latter 3 are all new here. I like the elephant. He's the ability to deal damage laterally is actually kind of a big deal, since Mario's normally more, he's got to jump on top of you vertically to do something. So this would enable you to sometimes like blast open paths, with your trunk. Watering the plants is usually more of a puzzle affair, where it's like you water a flower, something comes out of it, maybe leads to another one of these, and you have to do a sequence of these flower watering things to open up maybe where the wonder seed is. So that's less of an offensive thing. It's less useful for that purpose. But yeah, other than that, the elephant is fine. It looks fun. It looks more fun than it actually is, I think, to be the elephant. But you're right. The drill. So what the drill lets you do is you can drill into surfaces above or below. And so once you're like underground, you can just slide along the perimeter of the wall or the floor or the ceiling, and that will allow you to get up to things. But also, because you have this big pointy drill on your head, when you jump out of the floor or the wall or whatever, if there's an enemy around, you bash them with it. So as Mario, you're used to hitting things with your feet. Now you can bonk enemies with your head. And so you're getting them in 2 directions. And it makes everything a little more fun, a little more zippy. So yeah, that would be my pick as well for the best power up in the game.
Yeah, the drill is a lot of fun. That being able to burrow into the roof or the ground and then traverse the level that way and deal undersided or oversighted damage to enemies is super cool. The flower power up is okay. The bubble flower, I should say, is okay. The bubble lets you shoot bubbles, and if it catches an enemy, it instantly takes care of them and turns them into a coin, which is pretty nice. But it's got a dual purpose use where if you shoot your bubble and then jump on it, you get a little bit of a double bounce, a little height boost, which can be useful for traversal. I found it more useful in theory than in practice. This is actually one that I had during the final boss fight. Because one thing this game lets you do, I don't know if this is new to this game, but you can bank one power up. If you collect
that is a Super Mario World classic right there.
Oh, of course.
That's a very like key part of that is like it's like because you have the feather that lets you fly, and then you might have like a flower up there, and it's like, ooh, well, if I switch into one, I bank the other one back up there. And so, yeah, that's a big part of that game is you can have one in reserve. So they do that here. The bubble thing, like straight up lifted from Bubble Bobble. If you've ever played that game, like that's what that whole game is. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wait a minute. I thought Bubble Bobble was the thing where you've got the jewels and you have to like shoot them from the arrow.
Like puzzle. That's Puzzle Bobble, which is like a kind of offspring of the original Bubble Bobble, which is you're a little guy, a little dragon, and you laterally shoot bubbles to capture enemies, and then you bounce on them or you bounce on your bubbles to reach whatever you need to reach. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so they literally kind of co-opted the basic Bubble Bobble mechanics for this. It is really good offensively in this game because you can throw out tons of bubbles at once, just one after the other, which puts kind of like a safety net between you and any enemy. They're going to hit it and then be bubbled by it. So it is useful. It's certainly better than having no power ups, but. It's useful for traversal, but quite often you can use one of your badges for even better traversal. So it's not as vital.
Yeah, it'll get you places in a pinch if you need it. There's some jumping in the last final boss fight that is integral, and I had the flower power, the bubble flower power during that one, and I used it just because I had it. But like you don't need it anywhere by any means. I liked it. I would prefer the fire flower. And there are some stages that eliminate all of the enemies stages where you've got like 3 or 4 different rooms to go through and you've got to eliminate the enemies. And depending on what the enemies are, one might be more useful than the other. More often than not, I'm reaching for the fire flower. It's just classic. You can kind of direct where it's going. The bubbles you can't really direct. They just go out laterally. And they kind of have a deceleration. The fireballs, I just find them to be a little more predictable. I don't know. It's fine. They're all fine. None of them are bad. That kind of covers the main mechanics, I think. I don't think I'm missing any, am I?
No, I don't think so. I mean, that is basically what this game is. We can talk about the individual worlds, but by and large, they're just collections of playgrounds where you get to do this stuff. The only thing is that I think like I said, in the desert world, when you get to 4, it kind of opens up a little more. It has a lot more like pathways, places to explore and stuff. So I kind of wish that more of the game had that. But still, like level to level, it's just you're mostly getting like aesthetic changes to things. I don't know that going through the individual worlds yields much more in terms of like meaning for this conversation than it would to talk about any individual level over and over again. It's just there's 6 of these worlds plus Bowser's End World, and then the secret one that you can get to with a couple of like challenge levels in it.
Speaking of challenge levels, there are some levels that will have you play some sort of a mini game to get through. They're not like you can use any badge. What I'm thinking of specifically are the ones that are accompanied by the metronome. that gets faster and faster. It accelerates. Accelerando is what we call that in music. But I don't know why. Sometimes I like to be a parody of myself. I don't know. I don't know why people listen to this show. But what I appreciated about that, you mentioning the challenge levels made me think of this, is that a couple of these are hard. Hard, man. Like, I struggled to get through a couple of the last ones because as the metronome accelerates, new blocks and platforms will appear. So it might start off at, like, I don't know, 80 beats a minute, and every other beat you are getting a new platform. And you can't go too fast because the boxes won't appear, the platforms won't appear. But only, I think, 4 at a time can be there. So whenever number 5 comes in, number 1 goes away. When number 6 comes in, number 2 goes away, and so on and so forth. That sort of snaking pattern. And as it starts to get faster and faster, you've got to be really precise with your jumps. And man, some of these are tough. There's one that I just couldn't get. So I stopped.
And they even show you like the outline of where it's coming, so you know where it's going to be. It's not like you have to totally memorize it and surprise it. It's not Mega Man, but these are among the hardest things in the game. I have beaten them in my first playthrough. I got this time when I was playing for the show. I was like, I don't need to force myself to do this again. I did it once. I proved I could. But so if you do have any appetite for the Mesa core platforming, there is a little of it. For those more experienced or players or someone looking for a challenge like this, but like I said, as a gameplay idea, they're not bad. And it's also like you still do they show you the countdown, like it's a total of like 45 seconds of gameplay to just do it. So the good news is, like, failing, you can iterate on it. You can try again. All right, I'll try again. Okay, I'll try it again. It's a short thing. It's just hard to do for 45 seconds. It's almost like a circus type trick. Like, it doesn't last long, but it's got to be perfect.
One thing I do like that they threw the bone that in those levels are coins and flower coins too, including the big 10 flower coins, the big ones that give you 10. And if you get those 10 flower coins, the big ones, and then you die, you don't have to get them again. Like, they throw you that bone. They say, you earned it, you got it. Now just focus on finishing the level. Easier said than done.
Yeah, but they are nice in that they are more like signposts of like where you're supposed to go. So they do help in that regard.
Totally. Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I like a platforming challenge. You mentioned Celeste earlier, just as a joke. That's one of my favorite games of all time. I love Celeste.
I do too. I bought it sight unseen because my daughter's name happens to be Celeste. So I was like, there's a game called Celeste. I guess I better buy it. And then it turned out to be kind of a big deal. And it was hard. Like, I pushed my way through it. But that is, I think, kind of the gold standard for like very precise.
Yeah. Nothing like that here. But those metronome levels are still fun. What say we just conclude by talking through some of these worlds as a whole? Including the final one, Bowser's Rage Stage.
Sure.
So we've got 6 total. They are Pipe Rock Plateau, Fluff Puff Peaks, Shining Falls, Sun-Baked Desert, Fungi Mines, Deep Magma Bog, and then it ends with Bowser's Rage Stage. I said earlier offhandedly that my 2 favorites were Fluff Puff Peaks and the Deep Magma Bog. Matt fell off, only 3 in before the last 4, which you, Doug, said were your favorites. Did you want to elaborate on that at all?
Well, like I said, I really liked the Desert Stage 4 because that is where the map kind of really opens up. So, for example, when you're doing the mountain climbing one or the Fluff Puff Peaks, there's still a pretty path you're supposed to stay on. And occasionally you get to a spot where there's like 3 levels you can do in any order or ignore if you need to. But they're still fairly linear in a way that, like, the desert has a lot more secrets to it. You walk, there's like a palace in the middle of the desert. So like you can kind of go behind it in places and find secret little alcoves and stuff with other secret levels inside them or other, gateways to places. So I really liked how that was laid out in terms of a map. That was more of like the kind of Mario map that I wanted. I think the individual levels in that stage are also pretty good. So I like that one. The fungi mines are cool in that you kind of get a little more lost down there in terms of trying to get to the objective. Same with the bog, the magma bog. Like the final level where the wonder flowers is actually right near the start, but they give you a high number of wonder seeds it's gated behind. So you have to basically wind your way down through most of this mine, uncovering everything, doing lots of levels to then finally come back up to the top and go, okay, now I can go proceed. So yeah, I like them all, but again, it's sort of like, it's all, as far as an individual level goes, it's all an aesthetic coating on top of a wireframe. And the wireframes of these are where it's at. Like that's, so all of this stuff is great, but I don't know that like there is distinctive. Like I think when you play Super Mario World and you say like, okay, we're in the forest levels are way more like get lost in than say some of the others, or like the ghost houses, which they don't really do here. There's not so much of like the Boo mansions like they have there. So that's why I feel like these levels, they have a lot of personality in terms of their visual design, but I don't think that like that quite translates into the design of the levels themselves. It seems more aesthetic than play.
Mostly, yeah. There are a few little things. The desert, for example, introduces sand, which you actually run slower through, so you get a badge that helps offset that, a badge that just lets you run faster, which you can then use in the challenge levels against Wiggler. There are some race levels that comes in handy for. And then, obviously, Deep Magma Bog, there's just going to be more lava in that one, because of course, it's aesthetic and function. I think the desert one too, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be, that had more secret passages and like hidden areas in the actual levels themselves, at least up until that point. Like then Pipe Rock Plateau, Fluff Puff, and Shining Falls, I think.
I think so. There's also like, occasionally a level. So when you go to a level, it'll show you there's, 2 wonder seeds within the level, which is always, there's one for completing the level and there's one for getting the wonder thing within it, right? Almost everything has 2. Occasionally there will be one with 3, but they don't tell you that. So sometimes you'll get to the end of a level and you won't get a wonder seed and you'll be like scratching your head, which means like, what I have to do is find the secret exit, or you'll find the secret exit first. You'll luck into it and you'll see, there were actually 3 and now I have 1 and 3, but not the middle one, or something like that. But like I said, you don't necessarily get a new path for most of these. Some of them you do. There's occasionally they lead to a little like Captain Toad guy, which is just like fun.
Oh wait, really?
Like 50 coin. Yeah. If you find one, you'll find your little secret path, and Captain Toad will be there to be like, hi, and you get 50 purple stars for finding him. And then some of these, I believe, you need to do to reach the pathways up to the secret challenge levels of the sky.
Man, I tell you what, whenever I talk, like, I've been upfront. I'm not like the biggest Mario head. I have a lot that I don't know. But I swear, man, every time I talk to somebody that knows these games, I feel like I've never played them at all. Especially like Super Mario Brothers 3 and World, geez Louise, Odyssey and Galaxy. I just feel like anytime I beat one of these, I feel like I've played 50% of the game, and there's just still so much more to learn and to unlock.
I mean, that's kind of the thing for Mario, right? It's all about exploration. We want to reward you for exploring. It goes all the way back to the first Mario, where you're like, in that second level, it's like, hey, wait a minute, if I ride this elevator up and over the exit pipe, and then go, hey, look, there's pipes that let me warp to worlds 2, 3, and 4, right? That experience is, again, like a core Mario thing, and they want to give, like, you definitely want to get to the end of a Mario game, beat Bowser, and realize, hey, there's like 30% of this I haven't even seen yet.
Totally. Absolutely. Speaking of getting to the end, Bowser's Rage stage is sort of the final level. Once you dispel all of Bowser's, they're like piranha plant smoke screen things that you get the royal seeds to dispel. But once you do that, he invites you in to experience his wonder. And his wonder is, like you said earlier, Doug, kind of like a hair metal glam rock concert. It's pretty cool. It's pretty spiffy. What I liked about these stages, and you can encounter a few of these on the way here too, is that they're kind of like a mixture between the castle levels of the past and the ship levels from Super Mario Brothers 3. Those are just in my head because I had just played it, but they're basically a 2024 version of that. I know this game came out in 23, but it's an updated version of that.
Yeah, they're definitely deliberately calling back to that. There are some ship levels that are literally just like the ship levels from Mario 3. And yeah, this last world is definitely it's a little bit of the classic. Let's give you a final exam. There's going to be some things you've seen before, maybe in a different way. But like, there's that level where there's like missiles everywhere, and you have to ride them.
Oh
They,
yeah.
that one's really cool. I remember that. They all have this rock theme, which is nice because like they already gave you like a magma world, and usually magma time is that is world 8. That is your end stage with Bowser. So they decided to use that on something else. So what are they going to do here? And I think making it feel like, yeah, you are like everything. This goes back to a thing with Mario 3 as well, where Mario 3 is the conceit is that it's a play that's happening that you're watching with like curtains and stuff. And here it's sort of like, yeah, you feel like you're sort of on stage almost as Bowser is being the guy in the booth managing the lights and pyrotechnics as you're going through it, which is great. Like, it's this great feeling of like, when danger appears in these levels, it's not just because, oh, there's another turtle floating somewhere. It's because like Bowser is shooting a thing at you or setting off some kind of a trap deliberately as you're making your way through. And it feels like he's kind of got his finger on the button, just kind of going like, hey, Mario, watch out. As you go through. It's a cool like set piece of a world.
It totally feels like that. You're exactly right. All the way up until the final battle too. The final battle with him, he's still in his floating like head castle kind of form, but he brings up sort of like floating hands too, mechanical hands, not dissimilar to like Master Hand in Smash. And the final level is just entirely centered around like jumping to the rhythm. And just it's what it amounts to is several jumps and headbutts into the hands and Bowser's floating head thing until you're able to jump on his head, and that sort of completes it. That's sort of what it boils down to. But in the interim of that, the ground is going to be pulsing with the beat, and sometimes it pulses all at once, sometimes in bisected, sometimes in quadrants, like that. And you have to sort of know what's going to come up based on where the beat is. And all the while, he's throwing giant fireballs and missiles and enemies at you. It's a lot of fun. It was really gutsy of them to use basically a rhythm level as the final boss. I loved it. It's all, like you said, he's hitting the pyrotechnic buttons. He's controlling the lights. He's got the music going. It's, aesthetically and like musically, totally different from the rest of the game. Not even close. But what a fun final romp. Unless you're counting the end credits, which is just a celebration of the entire game up to that point, which again, I loved it so much. This final level was like really intense, and it's not hard, but it is, I thought it was appropriately long and just a spectacle. I had a lot of fun,
Yeah, it's not hard, but it's exhilarating. And
yeah.
that feeling of like you're watching all the visual cues, the changing in the colored lights on the floor, knowing when to jump to hit the crystals in the middle of the hands, and then Bowser. It felt like, it was an appropriate level of challenge for this game, to feel like, like it didn't take me many tries to kill Bowser. I might have done it. I might have even done it in one, at least this last playthrough I did, because I'd done it before. But like, it's the best feeling to like stomp on this guy, who I've killed countless times since my childhood. But it's a great way to go out, because it goes out with a literal bang, in a way that's like, I like a game with a victory lap. I don't need, again, to have the challenge be this, monumental thing at the end that, I barely beat by the skin of my teeth. Sometimes it's really fun to go like, you know what? You put me through the paces during the game, so now I get to kick your butt and have fun doing it. Like, see Super Metroid, right? The classic ending there. Just that kind of thing where it's just like, yeah, turn me loose.
A victory lap is the perfect way to describe it. I had not, your Mario stuff, man. Great guest for this episode.
Thank you.
It does feel really exhilarating. It's great to smash them up. And, is it my favorite final Mario sequence? No. The Galaxy sequence is really tough to top, but that's also comparing 3D to 2D, apples to oranges. It's almost not fair. It was a lot of fun. Then you get your, ending. And then Prince Florian will take you back to the start and say, there's more Wonder Seeds to collect, maybe. More secrets to discover. Why don't you do that? I know I have several more to collect. I am mixed on whether or not I'm going to go back to this, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I've still got the Titan of World, and then Yoshi's Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island is what we got.
That's really neat, too.
Yeah, I've still got plenty to go back to. I've still not even played Galaxy 2 or completed Galaxy. Like, I beat the game, but I didn't get everything, I've got so much to do Mario-wise.
Yeah, Galaxy 2 is phenomenal. I mean, you've got some fun times ahead of you for those three. Yeah, I'm the same way. I got to the end of it and I was like, I've had my fill. This is candy as a game. It's not hard fought stuff. But there's plenty of games where I've gotten to the end of it and gone like, well, I've done it. That's my playthrough. It was hard, and now I'm done, and I'm setting it down. This is the perfect, like, I don't know, maybe I'll pick it up and play a level. It's a minute and a half of, fun, in little bite-sized chunks that add up to a game. So it left me wanting more, maybe not from Super Mario Wonder, but leaves me wanting more for Super Mario Wonder 2 or whatever this team does next. Like, it's, again, give me one of these every couple of years and I will be a happy camper.
Hear, hear. Well said, and I could not agree more. With that, I know we didn't go through every single stage. Quite frankly, I think that would have been a boring podcast and way too long. But I enjoyed this talk greatly. It's nice to sit down and just gush about a game every now and then and take off the critical hat and just talk about what games should be at the end of the day. Fun, a good time. And this was great. I had a lot of fun with this. It's going to be fun editing this, especially with the music. Very excited for that. But if you haven't played Super Mario Wonder, it's been over a year since it first came out in October of 23. Get on it. Give it a try. It is a great time. It's a lot of fun. Not the hardest thing in the world, but a very fun guided experience. Now, as we always do at the end of the episodes, I want to talk a little bit about the guests' show and projects going on. Doug, you're a new guest on the show. Folks have not heard about your show, Nostalgium Arcanum. Arcanum or Arcanium?
I say Arcanum, but I don't know. It's a bunch of Latin. I shouldn't have picked for a name anyway because it's too hard to spell and remember. But yeah, I'm happy to tell you about the show. Rick has been on the show once talking about Final Fantasy IX. And we've done, it's not a video game show per se. We've done many video game episodes, but it's a nostalgia show. So it's whatever thing the guest is, super nostalgic for from their youth that they're still kind of obsessed with all these years later. The refrain I usually hear from guests is, I wore out the tape, which one means they're old enough to have experienced whatever it was on a tape, as opposed to some other medium. But like, that's kind of the vibe. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen this movie or listened to this album or whatever 1,000 billion times, and it still moves me to this day. So that's what it's about. So yeah, I guarantee you, if there's a pop culture topic that you're into, there's something for you there. We've done at this point, probably over 140 episodes, something like that. So there's going to be something there that you'll gravitate towards, I hope.
Totally. To give listeners an idea, two of the non-video game things that I considered but already had episodes on were George Carlin, which I should not have listened to as young as I did, but I did. And of course, the same one that I think everybody of a certain age group could pick, Pokemon. Lots of stuff on Nostalgium Arcanum to listen to. And it's a lot of really good stuff as well, especially if you want to get out of the rut of just listening to video game podcasts, which, some of us in these circles fall into. Now, another thing that I like to ask guests to talk about is the newest episode, either just released, just recorded, however you'd like to promote the new goings-on over in your neck of the woods. So what's new in Nostalgium Arcanum?
Let's see. So this is going to come out on March 10th?
Oh, okay. Wait, this episode?
I'm asking you.
I thought you meant your show. I'm sorry. No, this episode will technically be out on March 6th, so a little in advance.
Okay, so then the last episode that was just released was on Total Recall. And so if you want to hear two middle-aged dudes do a lot of Arnold Schwarzenegger impressions, that's your spot. Yeah, God damn it. A lot of that.
That was pretty good.
So we did... thank you very much. So we have that coming up. We have some fun things. So on March 10th, Mario Day, we're going to do a retrospective on the music of 1991. And then after that, for St. Patrick's Day, we're doing Leprechaun in the Hood.
Oh, nice.
All kinds of really different stuff. And then for, I think, people in your cohort, coming up on April 7th is a Goofy movie. And I feel like every kid I talk to that's a 90s kid is like, oh shit, a Goofy movie. So I'll put that out there that is coming up soon.
I do love that movie. That's a great movie. I had a lot of fun with that. As you can tell, a lot of different and varied tastes on Nostalgium Arcanum. Really something for anybody that's tuning in. Definitely check that out. You can find all of Doug's links in the description to the podcast on social medias and to the podcast on podcast apps. You can also find links to our stuff, as always, the Instagram, the Twitter, the Blue Sky, the Discord, etc. Not sure how much longer I'm going to be using Twitter, but that's neither here nor there. You can also rate...
Why? It's a wonderful place.
Oh, yeah, sure. You can
it's
also
not at all run by a megalomaniac Nazi, so, you know.
It makes me mad.
There's not enough time.
Day.
I know.
Yeah, there's truly not. You can also rate and review the show if you would be so kind. It helps us with the algorithm, etc., etc. Oh, TikTok and YouTube now. I make those now, YouTube Shorts and TikTok, so you can find those too. And as I said, all of Doug's stuff as well, Nostalgium Arcanum. That's about it for this episode. Doug, thanks for coming on. It was a blast talking to you for the first time on this show, second time on any podcasting medium. This was a lot of fun. I'm hoping to work with you more.
I would love to, man. This is a great chat. It was a great chance to go back and play Super Mario Wonder again. And yeah, you're welcome on my show anytime you like.
Listeners, beware. Well, folks, thanks for sticking around. Go play Super Mario Wonder. And until then, I'm Rick. I'm your host. Signing off for now. Take care.